If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
Let's switch gears, though. College basketball fans, the start of the NCAA tournament. The first round of the NCAA tournament gets underway Thursday. We had the first of the first 4 games played on Tuesday. Another set we played on Wednesday. For many NBA fans, there will be a chance to get a close look at some of the players who will have their name called in June at the NBA draft. Alabama's #1 overall seed this year. They have the highest rated NBA prospect playing in college basketball right now, Brandon Miller. There has been a lot of controversy surrounding this team and Brandon Miller because it was revealed in court documents that he returned a gun to a teammate that then is alleged to have used the gun in a killing of a 23-year-old mother, Jamia Harris, and how Alabama has handled that situation, some of the dismissive commentary from the head coach, NATO, some of the antics from Brandon Miller, and I use antics, maybe that's not the right word, but he had an intro where he did a pat down and it seemed disingenuous or at least heartless in that sense, considering there was someone killed through a gun violence in part due to some of his actions. So a lot of controversy surrounding the Alabama team, but they are a stacked team, and Brandon Miller, as far as the basketball player, is the real deal. So they're going to be a lot to handle in this tournament. They won the SEC tournament this past weekend. Other #1 seeds includes Houston, Kansas, and Purdue. On a Knicks-related note, for those who may be interested and want to catch these games live, the East Regional will be held at Madison Square Garden. So the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 matches for the East region will be held at MSG. They just recently got back into the rotation of NCAA tournament games. So this is the first time in a while that they've done this. They did it maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, and that was the first time in like 60 years that there were NCAA tournament games at Madison Square Garden. So the Big East tournament wasn't enough for you. You'll get more of your Madison Square Garden college basketball fill this week with this tournament. Now I know, look, I do a lot of NBA draft coverage, a lot of NBA draft stuff, so I've been familiar with a lot of these players. I'm not sure how much Tommy has been tuned in. How are you feeling about this NCAA tournament? Are you excited? Are there players you're interested in seeing? Like, well, how do you feel coming in?
Yeah, a little bit. I obviously with the rise of the G League Ignite and the Wembayanas and guys playing overseas, I'm personally not as familiar with a lot of the, outside of the top tier prospects, the Brandon Millers, et cetera, that you're going to, the Eddies that you're going to see on, take center stage here. I'm looking forward to keep an eye on them. You mentioned just the East, the Garden. If Duke advances that far, that could be a home game for the Dukies.
Yeah.
Also, Kentucky could be playing with Jacob Toppin, the younger brother of Obi Toppin, some for Knick fans to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm going to lean on you more. A couple quick questions before we get into kind of the big picture. UConn Iona. First round matchup. UConn was one of the teams I really thought actually on the 4 seed one of the teams that I thought had a real chance to make a deep run here, potentially even win it all. And we should know this year is as wide open as any year that we can imagine. There's no really clear cut favorite. I personally have UCLA winning it all, so I don't have UConn going that far, obviously. But yeah, UCLA is my team. I'll get that out of the picture. Playing Iona, the 13th seed. First and foremost, as a Johnny's fan, your thoughts on Rick Pitino potentially ending up at St. John's, and kind of relatedly, does Iona losing or winning increase the chances of him ending up at St. John's?
Ooh, so I personally don't think that the result will matter. I think now Rick, he's talked a lot about this. It's kind of weird. I just rarely see it. Most coaches say, I don't even want to talk about it until, I get to that point. But he's just talking about, I got to meet with these people. I got to see the facilities. I haven't been to St. John's in 40 years. I got to go on the campus. I'm like, all right. I mean, he's being very open.
A different dude.
Yeah. And Rick Pitino's on. He's definitely a different guy, to say the least. So I don't know if a result will matter per se. I think that in many ways, it's going to come down to flat out, does St. John's have the money? And even beyond the money for Rick, I think it's also going to be, do they have the money to really build a correct basketball program, because that's been the big deal with St. John's. I mean, they play at Carnesecca Arena for the majority of their home games, and it's just not a college basketball facility that should be held for a Power 5 program. Like, it's fine. It's great. Like the high school tournament, the high school Catholic high school leagues, they play their playoffs games there. The championship was just last weekend, and it's perfect for that kind of venue. It's just not perfect for a Big East tournament team. It doesn't make sense. And St. John's is, kind of descent into irrelevancy kind of removed some of their relationship with Madison Square Garden. They used to play a lot of their games at Madison Square Garden. Now it's about maybe 4 games a year at MSG. So it's not quite the same. So I think Rick, he wants to say, hey, are you guys going to, pay me, 1, but 2, are you going to put the money and resources needed to make this thing right? So that means playing 10 home games at Madison Square Garden. That means building a real arena on campus, because this thing is Carnesecca Arena. I mean, I've played at the practice facility back when I was a high school player. It's a fairly new facility. It was built right around when I was playing, around 2009, 2006. The practice facility is nicer than Carnesecca Arena. I mean, it's ridiculous what's going on in terms of just just how behind the time St. John's is with that. So I think that it'll more come down to that. This is a weird game between Iona and UConn, because I think UConn is one of the teams that I thought could go really far in this tournament. But then you got Iona, who they have some size. They have some guy like Junior Joseph is a pretty good shot blocker. So going up against Sonogo, it won't be maybe as big a mismatch as you'll see against other smaller mid-major teams. They have shooting as well. And the game's being played in Albany. So this is going to be a true neutral site. There'll be a lot of UConn fans there, but I think Iona is going to have a really, really good showing. I mean, they play in the MAC conference. So there will be plenty of people interested in Iona. So I think that's actually going to be one of the better games in the first
round. Speaking of Iona as a 13, before we get to the heavy hitters, we know there's going to be a 12-5 upset. Probably, a 13 seed's going to advance. Of those seeds, I'll give you 12 and below. Is there one team you love to win more than one game? Is there one team you love to at least win that one game? Any of those lower seeds you think have a chance to make some noise here?
Yeah, in my bracket, I have Charleston going to the Sweet 16. Charleston is a team that had a phenomenal regular season. They won 31 games, which was the most games of any team this season. They do have some wins against some notable programs. They beat Virginia Tech at home. They beat Davidson at home. They beat Colorado State at home. That was all in their non-conference. And then, of course, they ran the table essentially in their conference play. They lost a couple teams in conference play, but for the most part, dominant team, really good offensive team. They have 5 guys averaging double figures this season, so they can score the ball. They average 80 points a game. So they play San Diego State, and I think that's a great matchup for them in that first round, because San Diego State is a team that likes to play in the half court. In many ways, they're very much kind of like Virginia West. If you think about how Virginia, Tony Bennett, how they play that pack line style defense, like a half court kind of game. That's how San Diego State plays. And those teams scare me in the tournament, because all it takes is for one of these teams to get hot from 3 and speed you up to now where you're playing a game that is not comfortable. And those teams sometimes can, I think, be overinflated in terms of their ranking, because they're playing in a conference oftentimes that they're very familiar with their opponents. They know what their opponents want to do. So they know how to play their style of play and impose their will. A lot harder playing as a random team you have very little film on, or you've never played before, and in a random city that you've never played in before. And sometimes at noon, like the times are weird. Like those teams scared me. So I think Charleston has a chance to go really far in this tournament. They got a lot of scoring, a lot of depth, and they're not your typical 12 seed. They're a team that could be a much higher seed.
You mentioned their similarity to Virginia. They'd have to play, assuming Virginia beats Furman, they'd have to play Virginia second round. You're okay with that matchup? You think that's
that's part of the reason why I have them advancing. But I think Virginia may lose this. I think that Furman also is a team that is very dangerous. Another very good offensive team as well. And Virginia has scuttled a little bit. They've had some injuries. So I think Furman actually may upset Virginia as well. I would feel comfortable picking Charleston in either game, but Virginia will have their hands full in that first round matchup as well.
All right, let's get to it. Give me your final 4 from each bracket, and then we'll go from there.
All right, so I got Alabama coming out of the South region. If you've watched this team, I know they're not likable for a lot of maybe fair reasons, but They are absolutely loaded offensively. Brandon Miller is a killer. Javon Quinley, who's from this area, played in New Jersey. Also really seems to be getting back into form. He got back in the starting lineup in the SEC tournament. He's a starting point guard. He's a phenomenal guard as well. So I got Alabama.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Real quick before you move on from Alabama, some talk I've seen people talking about Brandon Miller moving past Scoot Henderson to number 2. Is that a reasonable possibility in your opinion?
I think it will be, because Brandon Miller is a kind of player that I think a lot of these teams have been looking for. Like, the Kevin Durant model is like the guy that people are like, if I can get that kind of guy, like, like that's it's a basketball unicorn, and Brandon Miller, he's 6'9", 6'10", a great handle for a guy his size, can shoot from anywhere, pull up game, great athlete, needs to get a little stronger, but the offensive package is so enticing. And Scoot, while being a really impressive prospect, not necessarily being impressive regarding like his physical frame, he's very strong, but he's only 6'2", so he's not a guy who you're looking at and say, okay, he's going to be able to tower over most point guards. And they're, quite frankly, other point guards who are even bigger than him. Amen Thompson, who's a 6'7" point guard playing for overtime elite. I can see a team or multiple teams looking at the frame, the bag that Miller has, and saying, I can't pass that up for a 6'2" point guard. I can see it. Now, would I do it? I wouldn't do it right now. I have character concerns. I don't like what happened with that gun thing. And I think Brandon Miller could be a little bit I think sometimes he get a little bit, he's young, but he could be a little, shot, tunnel vision, where he's just only looking for his own shot. I like to see him, play within a team where he's not the number one option. He can just shoot whenever he wants. So I have not major concerns, but some concerns with him that I wouldn't take him at 2. But yes, some people will definitely have him as their second guy.
I couldn't help but thinking if the John Morant situation might impact Brandon Miller, even, when teams start to discuss the importance of character and the situation with the gun involved. All right, moving on. Your other 3 Final Four clubs.
So my other 3. So it says Alabama in the South. In the East, I have Marquette. A little nervous about this one because I don't like to overrate the conference tournaments, and the Big East in this new form has not really done much in the tournament. But I think Marquette's different. One, because they have excellent guard play. Their starting guard Kolek is, I think he averaged about 7 assists this season. He's had a great season. He had a great Big East tournament. They have shooting. They have size. They're a really good team. So I have Marquette coming out of that East region, and they're very familiar playing at Madison Square Garden. They've had a dominant run through the Big East tournament, so they'll be comfortable there. In the Midwest, I'm going with Texas. Also 2 great guards with Carr and Tyrese Hunter. Size with Daisu and some of the guys they got there. So I have Texas coming out of that region. And in the West, I got Kansas. So a little bit chalky, a little more chalky than I normally go. But I'm going with Kansas. Now, I will say subject to change. I am one of those people that will change their bracket up until Thursday at 11:50. But for now, I'm going with Kansas because I like the guard play. Wilson is one of the best college basketball players in the country. And you talk about NBA draft prospect Grady Dick, a guy who definitely could be hearing his name in the lottery. They got great shooting with him. So Kansas, a complete team. I have them, and hopefully Bill Self shot him. Hopefully he's doing well. I know he's in the hospital. Assuming he's able to coach, I think that they'll be ready to go.
But they do have the accomplished backup coach in Norm Roberts too. So
Norm Roberts, right? Yeah,
they have plenty of experience on the bench. I know you're a Gonzaga guy. One, how did you become a Gonzaga fan? First and foremost, give us the story there.
Yeah, so my Gonzaga fandom is pretty simple. Like, I hated UConn, and I know you're saying, what does that have to do with Gonzaga? So I hated UConn, because I was a St. John's fan growing up, and I'm still a St. John's fan. But I'm also a huge Gonzaga fan, and I hated UConn. And 1999, this is like the height of the UConn St. John's rivalry. They're both playing in Big East major games, top 10 teams. St. John's went to the Elite 8. UConn ended up winning that championship. And Gonzaga went on their magical run in 99, their first run to the Elite 8 and their first kind of arrival to the national scene as a 10 seed. And they beat Florida in the Sweet 16, and they had a matchup against UConn. And just the way they played the ball, the way they moved the ball, I thought the name was cool. Like, I was just like, these guys are awesome, man. And then also they were a team that was shooting all these threes too. Like I know Gonzaga has kind of evolved much more than just a team that shoots threes now, but they were shooting all these threes too. Like they had Richie Fram and Matt Santangelo, Casey Calvert. Like they were a team. They had stretch fives. Like they played a totally different brand of basketball than most other teams in college basketball at that time. Immediately fell in love with the program and everything that they were about, and became pretty much a fan ever since. I did not realize that was going to be the beginning of them becoming a national power. Like it's not like, I guess you could say I jumped on the bandwagon, but not thinking it was going to be this. Right. I've been a fan ever since. So I'm hoping. I've never seen Gonzaga in person. They've only come out to the Garden a couple of times. I'm hoping to see them next time they come out to the East Coast.
Of the 4 Final Four teams, what's your most confident team that you're going to advance to the Final Four, and your least level of confidence in of those 4 clubs you picked?
I think the most I would say Alabama. I think Alabama, and part of it is because I think they're really, really good, but I also think that Alabama got a really good break with this bracket. Because again, whenever I see a number 1 seed, the first thing I run to is that 4 or 5 seeds. Who are those teams that they could be seeing in Sweet 16? I think that they would wash San Diego State or Virginia. I don't think that those teams would give them much of a game. So then I say, okay, so they're going to that, and I say, okay, what's the bottom half? Who are the teams there? Baylor, Keontae George has been dealing. He's another guy who could be an NBA, a high NBA draft pick, a top 10 guy. He dealt with an ankle injury towards the end of the season. Baylor has experience, but they've had guys in and out of the lineup all season. They don't necessarily have the same kind of veteran tact that we've seen from them in previous years, where you kind of feel like they can kind of just win any game just through guts and guile and just being there. A lot of these guys are now, guys who were bench guys who are now the guys for them. So I like Baylor. I don't know if I like them enough to beat Alabama. Arizona's a really good team. They're the team that I would say, okay, that would be a really good game. Arizona's one of the most efficient offensive teams in college basketball. Tommy Lloyd was a longtime Gonzaga assistant for Mike Marfil. In fact, he was the coach in waiting, and he left to just take the Arizona job. Arizona, he's done a tremendous job. Tommy Lloyd, since he got there, we saw what he did with Ben Mathurin last season, made him a top lottery pick. So that'll be a really good game. But I think that, Arizona's got to get there too. So Arizona, I think, has a much tougher side of the bracket than the Alabama side. I think that Creighton could be dangerous. I mentioned Baylor. I think either Missouri State or Utah State could be a tough second round game for them. So I think Alabama, definitely the most I feel comfortable with. The least, I would say Kansas, because I think Kansas, on the flip side, did not get a good draw. I think a lot of Kansas fans were upset. I think they thought that they should have been a 2 seed in this. Houston ended up getting that 2 seed. They were very upset about. They thought they could have even been an overall 1 seed especially before losing to Texas. But I mentioned UConn. They have a tough first round game, but UConn has all the makings of a team that could win a national championship, and they're a 4 seed in their own bracket. So that could be a tough regional game. The 8-9 matchup. I mean, Arkansas is loaded with talent, like Anthony Black, Nick Smith, Eric Musselman is an experienced coach who's taking his team deep in tournament runs. Kansas, I was very worried about, and then even on the bottom side, I think Gonzaga is being a little underrated. I think TCU is being underrated. I thought 60 for them was a little harsh considering how good the Big 12 was. And UCLA, I know your pick to win it all. They lost Jalen Clark. But UCLA has a lot of experience. They've been in this tournament situation. They've been to the Final Four. Tyga Campbell and Jaime Jaquez. It feels like those guys have been there forever. Yeah. Amari Bailey, another guy who could be an NBA guy, has really come on of late. So if they can overcome the Jalen Clark injury, a big loss considering how great he is defensively. But if they can, that's a tough road. Like that's the team I'd be most worried about.
Yeah, the Clark injury is a major bummer. All right, we got your 4. Yep. How's that final weekend going to play out?
So I had Texas winning it all. The team that I've said nothing about this entire time. But yeah, no, Texas, they had a very troublesome. It's been a very weird college basketball season. A lot of off the court stuff happening. So they lost their coach, Chris Beard. He got arrested for a domestic incident at his home involving his wife. It sounded very alarming. It sounded like there was a choking incident happening, and it was all the things you don't want to hear. She recanted those statements, saying that they weren't true, and she acted out of frustration over something, and those charges were dropped. So he never returned. He got fired from Texas. And they have a new coach now who the team absolutely loves, and it was great actually hearing them talk about him in the post game. And there's this hope that they'll retain him as their full-time coach, and he's done a phenomenal job this season. So you combine that with the guys they have, and again, when I look at the tournament, I look at guard play. I'm like, who are the guys going to have the ball in their hands when the game matters the most, and do I trust him? I don't know if there's a guard I'd rather have the ball in his hands than Marcus Carr. Marcus Carr can shoot from anywhere. He can get into the paint. He's smart. He's physical. He's unselfish. He's one of the best point guards overall. He's kind of a combo, but he's one of the best guards in the country. And then Tyrese Hunter, they have a great combination because then I also want a guard who has irrational confidence, a guy who can feel that he can shoot from anywhere or make any big shot. Hunter is absolutely fearless. One of my favorite high school players from the class of, I guess that was 2021. This is not his second year after transfer from Iowa State. He had a big first-round game last year playing for Iowa State. That combination, along with Jabari Rice, they got everything. They were a team that in some ways underachieved last year, and they started this season. One of their marquee wins was a dominant blowout performance over Gonzaga, kind of letting people realize that Texas was here to stay. It scuttled a little bit after the coaching change, but once they kind of got their legs underneath them, they've been flying high. I think Texas, coming out of a really tough conference in the Big 12, will be ready to go, and I think that they'll win it all.
Sounds good. I think that's a solid. The other thing is I have Dukie's making it to the Final Four. Do you see any? Is that a reach? Is that a crazy scenario?
No, Duke is playing really well. Like again, now I didn't go there because, like I said, like I am very wary of the team that played really great in the conference tournament. And people say, "Oh, those are the last games I saw." So, like, those are the teams that I'm going to go with. So I was a little wary of picking Duke, but it had really little to do with that and more to do with how they play on the road. They were undefeated at home this year. Now they just went through a neutral site tournament where they won every game. So maybe that these concerns are unfounded. But on the road this year, they've struggled quite a bit. So, if they get to New York City, that will feel more like a home game. But these first few games, they have a tough match with Oral Roberts. Like, Oral Roberts is a team that I think that if they were not playing Duke, I would have picked them. But, like, I think if they can get through the first few games, I think that they'll be in good shape. I actually like their matchup with Purdue a lot. So that's not crazy. I have Duke in my Elite Eight. So I think that they're going to be right there. I think a Duke-Marquette Elite Eight matchup would be awesome. I just think there are so many good matchups to watch. Roach versus Kolek at the point guard. I mean, there's a lot. That would be a really awesome game. So not crazy. Not crazy. A lot of people will have Duke in their Final Four.
Yeah, the big point guard play that I saw from them in the tournament, I think that was, what really swung me. Like he seems to be a difference maker for them when, he kind of took over midseason, controlling the basketball, and again, they just have that pedigree that they're no game's gonna be too big for them in March.
Yeah, and really like Jeremy Roach, they're a team with a lot of freshmen. That's also a thing I also tell people during the tournament to worry about. Like, a lot of people want to run to the team with all the names that you hear in the NBA draft, but oftentimes teams that are built just with those guys usually, flop because they're not experienced and they're playing against.
True.
A lot of these teams in college basketball now, especially because of the transfer portal, you got 24-year-olds playing college basketball.
Yep.
But I think what makes Duke different is that they have a guy in Jeremy Roach who's like the old man on the team. He's been on the team for a while. He's played in big tournament games, and we saw how he took over some games in the ACC tournament. And you have him as your floor general. Now he's around Kyle Filipowski. He's around Whitehead, Proctor. Like, now these guys have kind of an anchor, And I got to give a lot of credit to John Shire, a guy who I questioned him getting that job replacing Coach K. He's done a phenomenal job. So Duke definitely, I expect to see New York in a couple of weeks.
All right, folks. Well, there you have it. When you win your tournament, send a Venmo to EJ, and we should be good.
Absolutely.